everyone, it's Jack from Cultaholic.com, and last week's AEW Dynamite was pretty good, probably the best show of Dynamite's run so far. But how did this week's show match up? There's only one way to find out, and that is by assigning each individual segment a lovely individual grade. That's right, it's time for AEW Dynamite Graded. We start off with a cold open featuring a couple of mini segments really. What is this? Breaking Bad, where basically the first one is Cody and Dustin, the brothers the brothers Gold, the brothers Dust, getting off their private jet, meeting Tony Schiavone and heading to the arena, or Cody at least, heading to the arena with Tony Schiavone. And in this segment, and a little similar one that aired later on, I thought it was too short to really give a grade to, but I really enjoyed it. Cody's really good at making things feel both over-dramatic and really intense, and at the same time making them feel kind of humble and personable and kind of like realistic, I suppose, in a way. He and Tony basically reminisce about Dusty quite a lot. Cody talks about his mother as well, who's going to be there at Full Gear, and he really wants to impress her and stuff. And it's all being built up really horribly, and I'm worried that something really horrible is going to happen to Cody at Full Gear. We also got another mini segment around this sort of time as well at the start of the show, where Jon Moxley barged into Tony Khan's office. We didn't see any of the confrontation. It all took place behind closed doors with handy subtitles in case you couldn't quite hear, but you could hear because Moxley was really angry and he was shouting really loud. Moxley's basically annoyed because AEW have taken the decision to make his match with Kenny Omega at Full Gear a lights-out, unsanctioned match, which, even though that means it'll be more brutal, I guess, it also means that it's not going to officially count towards either man's win-loss record. And Moxley was really annoyed about this, which is a really nice touch because it shows that wins and losses do indeed matter. I mean, it's a bit of a paradox how wins and losses matter, but they've made this one not matter. But I enjoy the fact that Moxley's really annoyed about this. He calls out Tony Khan and says, "You're just scared that I'm going to get a win over your boy." Like the Cody segments, this one was too short to really give a grade to, but I thought it was a nice touch to open the show and really set the scene for what was about to go down. But don't worry, because if you're thirsty for grades, we started things off properly with our first match of the evening. Sammy Guevara, a member of course of the Inner Circle, versus Hangman Page, a member of the Elite. So it was kind of a little clash in the wider war between the two sides. I'm making this sound like bloody Game of Thrones or something. This was a great little match to start the show, not because it was some kind of crazy lucha innovative spot fest, but because Sammy Guevara did do a few flips here and there, and he was really athletic and impressive, as he always is, and Page was as well. But the main impressive part of this match was actually the amount of characterization each man put into the simplest of things. Like literally every single thing that both of these guys did in the ring against each other was full of character work, whether it be Sammy displaying his egomania or Hangman Page demonstrating his babyface, his blue-collar spirit. At certain stages, Sammy was showing flashes of Chris Jericho. I don't know if this is just what Sammy's usually like as a heel. I wasn't too familiar with him prior to AEW, but a few things he did were quite early Jericho-esque, such as going up to the top rope and then just jumping down and slapping Hangman Page across the head. But at the same time, Page was able to pull out the victory, catching Sammy Guevara with a nice buckshot lariat and picking up probably the correct result in a big victory. This gets a B+, and Hangman Page got on the mic afterwards and promised that when he meets Pac at Full Gear, he's going to do some real cowboy S-word. Everyone loved it. I didn't love it. I'll explain why. Basically, right, this is meant to make you cheer Hangman Page, and while I do get it, and it does work for the majority of the audience, just on a personal note, and it hasn't affected the grade at all, but I'm from Newcastle, right, and if I wasn't already cheering enough for Pac, if you walk into a pub somewhere like Biker or Walker or Bencham in Newcastle, some of the tastier estates, and say that, you're going to get your arse handed to you, Hangman Page. So just be careful who you're provoking, because that's a right Geordie boy, that is, and he's going to pure smack you about like. It's a B+ is the grade. Next up, women's division action, Shanna taking on Hikaru Shida. Hikaru Shida obviously has popped up a few times here and there in AEW already. She lost to Riho in that match, which led to Riho's match with Nyla Rose for the AEW women's title, if that all makes sense, whereas Shanna was making her debut here. Shanna is a member of the European and UK independent scenes. She is basically, I think she was born in Portugal, but she was billed from France. Anyway, regardless, she seems pretty experienced, but I'm not personally too familiar with her. So this was the first Shanna match I was going to be properly paying attention to. And it was pretty good. It kind of started off a little bit slow here and there, but then it built towards more of a crescendo towards the end, and it was pretty impressive towards, the closing stretch. I thought that this match was going to be more of a dominant victory for Hikaru Shida to get more momentum back on her side, but at the same time, Shanna actually got quite a lot of offense in, and it was very back and forth. It felt almost like last week's match between Britt Baker and Jamie Hayter. Everyone was like, well, Britt Baker's going to get the huge hometown win, but, you know, Jamie Hayter actually had a lot to say for herself. Towards the end, as I say, things built nicely to a crescendo. Shida wasn't able to put Shanna away with the Falcon Arrow. Nobody kicks out of the Falcon Arrow, but she did put her away, actually, with a running knee strike. Daniel Bryan-esque. So Partridge, that. Let's get to B. It was a really good effort from both women, and they got quite a lot of time to work in. Things did start off a little bit slow and a bit awkward at times, but they really pulled it out down the stretch. So it gets a B grade. I thought watching this at the start, I was like, it's pretty obvious that these two haven't wrestled before. Then I went on cagematch.net, and they have wrestled 3 or 4 years ago in Swindon. Yeah. So a strong showing from a new member of the women's division and an established member of the women's division. Now we move on to the founder, the mother of the women's division, Brandy Rhodes, in what I can only describe as an insane video package. Now, I've never watched Twin Peaks, but I've seen references to Twin Peaks in other forms of pop culture, and I've heard some tropes about what Twin Peaks is like. So I'm going to make the least educated of guesses and say that this video package was a bit Twin Peaks-esque. If I'm wrong, please do correct me in the comments below and explain what that... I just felt like it was a bit Twin Peaks, that's all I'm saying. I'll just ask Sammy, bloody loves it. He's got it tattooed on his arm. Not the words Twin Peaks, he's got some Twin Peaks-based motifs. So yeah, regardless of whether it was Twin Peaksy or not, it was weird. There wasn't any information given here at all, just pure imagery. So we had Brandy, it looked like she was getting ready for a funeral. Other times she was just kind of maniacally moving around in like Apocalypse Now opening scene kind of style, but a bit more evil. She was kind of raising Awesome Kong from, I think Awesome Kong was raising up from a table at one point. It looks, I'm gonna do some analysis, I'm gonna try and guess what this means. I think it means that Brandy has gone off the deep end for whatever reason we don't know yet, and her and Awesome Kong are about to destroy the women's division. I don't know if they will, or how, or when, or why, but that's what I think is going to happen. Unfortunately, this gets the classic question mark grade, which I rarely use. I don't often like using the question mark grade. It feels like a bit of a cop-out at times, so I'll try and avoid it as much as I can. But honestly, there were no answers here whatsoever. We'll see how it progresses down the line. Next up, it's Chris Van Vliet. We all love him. He's so handsome and good at his job. Better than I am. I'm more handsome and in better shape. And older, but in better shape. Chris Van Vliet's here to introduce the Rock and Roll Express. I was confused when this segment began because I was thinking, hang on, the Rock and Roll Express are here to award the tag team titles to the winners of the final of the tag team tournament, and that match obviously hasn't happened yet. So why are the Rock and Roll... And then they were like, here comes the Rock and Roll Express, give them a big hand, they'll be doing stuff later on tonight. And I got this sense of dread. I was like, lads, don't come out here right now, get yourselves to the back, get a nice cup of tea and sit down, because this is not going to end well for you. I think they answer one of Chris Van Vliet's questions before they get jumped from behind by Santana and Ortiz, who come out really making a statement here by beating down two old men. That sounds less impressive, but they're beating down two legends of the game, showing pure disrespect and really establishing themselves as horrible, dirty heels in the tag team division, or further establishing themselves as that, I suppose, because they are doing a great job anyway so far. They don't just beat down the Rock and Roll Express, they even slam Ricky Morton through the stage. It looks really cool, and fair play to Ricky Morton for being the Ricky Morton of the situation. Yeah, he was, wasn't he? The Bucks come out a bit too late, to be honest, and chase off Santana and Ortiz, who really did a number on poor Ricky Morton. Fair play to you, Ricky Morton, for taking that bump. And not fair play to you, Chris Van Vliet. Big strapping man, not trying to help the old bloke getting his arse kicked. Shame on you, Chris Van Vliet. Actual shame on you. Sean Ross Sapp would have helped them. Dave Meltzer would probably have helped them too, I'm just saying. Kenny McIntosh, he would have kicked their arses. This gets an A grade. This is how you use legends in professional wrestling, using them to get the current talent over. And I can't imagine the Rock and Roll Express putting over current talent as strongly as they did here, especially Ricky Morton once again. October 30th from now on, right, that is known as Ricky Morton Day. I don't have the power to do that at all. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going absolutely crazy. Next up, 6-man tag team action as the Best Friends team up with Orange Cassidy to take on QT Marshall, John Silver, and Alex Reynolds. We saw Reynolds and Silver lose to Santana and Ortiz a couple of weeks ago, and their partner, QT Marshall, he's an associate producer at AEW and a former Ring of Honor wrestler as well. You'll see him quite a lot cropping up in the YouTube series on AEW and Being the Elite and everything if you follow those. The babyfaces come out dressed like Rick and Morty. Well, Orange Cassidy and Chuck Taylor are both dressed as Rick, and Trent Beretta is dressed as Morty. And that's fine, because I've seen Rick and Morty, and there's loads of Rick and Mortys, but I'm not clever enough to explain why, and I can't remember. But there's loads of universes, and each universe has a Rick and a Morty. It works. And it worked as well, because the crowd were wearing Rick and Morty masks, and there were even more Rick and Mortys. Ricky Morton got put through the stage. Hey! Ricky Morton, Rick and Morty. Excalibur made that joke on commentary already, and I've absolutely stolen it the day after. This was a pretty short, pretty fun match. Quite a lot of comedy, with a lot of crowd-popping moments as well, like Trent's wig falling off, the big best friends hug spot, and Orange Cassidy doing a suicide dive with his hands in his pockets. That was pretty cool too. So the crowd were really happy and, you know, engaged throughout, but it wasn't anything of great substance. But we weren't expecting it to be. The babyfaces got the big feel-good win, and hooray. This gets a B grade. It was a nice palate cleanser, I guess, a more light-hearted feel after the shocking attack on Ricky Morton. I understand that a lot of fans of AEW aren't necessarily going to be fans of Rick and Morty, so a lot of the references might have been lost. For example, you could tell on commentary that Excalibur knew exactly what was going on, and JR absolutely, he was totally lost, wasn't he? He was totally lost. Next up, what was very much the centerpiece of the show, which had been built up to with these little Cody video segments beforehand and everything. It was the contract signing for the AEW World Championship match between Chris Jericho and Cody. Chris Jericho came out dressed as Chris Jericho Halloween edition, or if you've seen, I think it's Tom Hanks' character on SNL, David S. Pumpkins, he looked a bit like that too, so that's a reference that a few people are going to enjoy, and everyone else is going to go, Jack, what are you talking about? I understand the problems with the Rick and Morty match now, to be honest. Tony Schiavone is hosting the segment, or Schiavone, as Jericho quite hilariously calls him. Jericho threatens to flip the table, but he's only joking, because he says to Cody, look, this is too important for those sort of shenanigans. Let's be professional about this. They shake hands, but it's all intense and everything, and then Jericho goes, look, I'm not going to wait here all night. You know, you better go, because I think you're needed somewhere else. And Cody's like, what are you talking about? And the Tron pops into life, and there's Sammy Guevara on camera going, oh, I'm in the parking lot, look what's going on. And he pans around, and Jake Hager is battering poor Dustin Rhodes in the parking lot. Cody rushes out to save his brother, but he's too late, as basically Jake Hager demonstrates what will happen if you say the phrase real cowboy S-word in some of the rougher estates in Newcastle upon Tyne. He knocks Dustin to the ground, slams his head into the car or the limousine behind him, traps his arm in the door of the limousine and just slams it shut. And Dustin was selling this like he'd very much broken his arm. It was a real Four Horsemen style attack, actually. And you know who the arch rival of the Horsemen was? It was the Rhodes family. It was Dusty Rhodes. It was Dusty. I see what you're doing, guys. I see what you're doing there. Jericho's all smug and evil about it and lights a victory cigar, because of course he does. That's just very Jericho behavior. This segment gets an A-. I didn't think it was as good as the crowd brawl from last week's show, but what was as good as that, really? That was so fun and funny. This week's was a little step down, but still really entertaining stuff, and it still continues to build hype for the big match between Cody and Jericho. Next up, more six-man tag team action as Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks take on Kip Sabian, Angelico, and Jack Evans. Kenny Omega's got himself a new Japanese RPG-style Titantron, like the one we saw at Wrestle Kingdom, which was full of symbolism, and I think that's what we got again here, but I don't exactly know what it's hinting at yet. Basically, we had a figure which looked a lot like the New Japan Lion logo, talking down to Omega, saying, look at all your friends, they're going to fade away and die and everything. Your best friend, Kota Ibushi, was never on your side. They never showed Ibushi, they never mentioned him by name, but there was a very pretty silhouette with what looked to be like the G1 trophy, so it was definitely Kota Ibushi. After all these references to Ibushi and to New Japan and Omega's past and everything, I went online to see what a few of the theories were that people had, because everyone was just losing their minds over this, going, what on earth does this mean? What does it mean? It could just be Omega just messing with us, to be honest, but people were saying like Kenny could be agreeing to do, you know, a match back in New Japan once again, probably against Ibushi, or it could be a Marty Scurll thing, because apparently there was some, what could be interpreted as Marty Scurll mannerisms and turns of phrase in this whole thing, which I didn't personally catch. My own personal opinion is that Kenny Omega is on the verge of a breakdown, and he's going to turn heel soon, which I desperately really want to happen, but I guess we'll just find out in the future. Then he comes out dressed as Sans from Undertale. I love it. I love that game. Anyway, yes, the match itself. Let's talk about the match, my God. It was a mile a minute, really fast-paced, really spot-festy, but at the same time, really fun. Like junk food in match form. Bit of a guilty pleasure, but it was really fun to watch. There was some great stuff from Omega, especially, of course. He's absolutely fantastic when he's on his game. But there was one moment that I didn't like too much. I thought it was a bit too cartoonish, but, you know, he got the hot tag. He took out all three of his opponents with Snapdragon suplexes, which are great. Then they all staggered to their feet, and then he kind of clicked his fingers or pointed at them or something, and they all happened to fall down as he did that. And JR on commentary didn't speak for about a minute after that. You could tell he was just like, ugh, what the hell was this? Isn't wrestling. This gets an A-. Really fast-paced, harmless, good fun wrestling. Yes, fluffy, you know, nonsense, but it was amazing to watch. There was some incredible displays of athleticism, so I really, really enjoyed this. Kenny Omega and the Bucks got the win after Kenny hit the one-winged angel, and then the Bucks were attacked at ringside by two fans in Rick and Morty masks, and they took those off and revealed themselves to be Santana and Ortiz. I'm liking that disguise has become kind of their modus operandi since their debut, really. Is it operandi or operandi? I actually don't know, but now that I've mentioned it, I'm now immune from criticism if I got it wrong. That's the way the world works, everyone. That's the way it happens. Next up, it's time for the librarians. Peter Avalon and Leva Bates come out to cut a promo on the crowd. Peter Avalon is getting heat instantly, and everyone's like, oh, not the librarians. And then Jon Moxley comes out from the crowd and just decimates Peter Avalon with a paradigm shift, and Leva Bates runs for the hills. It's the old switcheroo. They've bamboozled us, they have. We thought we were getting a Peter Avalon promo, we're getting a Jon Moxley promo, and he kills it. He gets the mic and he goes, you know what, you might have heard by now, my match with Kenny Omega is unsanctioned, and I'm really, really pissed about that. I hate it. He doesn't deliver it like I am there. I just hate it. He then says, basically, fine, AEW have asked for it, I'm going to deliver violence that you haven't seen in decades, and I'm going to do it all to your golden boy, Kenny Omega. I'm really enjoying this so far. It gets an A-, not too much more to say. It was short, it was simple, but it was very effective as well. And finally, the main event, the big tag team tournament final between SCU, Frankie Kazarian and Scorpio Sky, and the Lucha Brothers, Pentagon and Phoenix. And the winners obviously become the first ever AEW tag team champions. This was really good. It got time to breathe, it got time to build. You know, there was great back and forth sequences and double team moves and swings of momentum. It was a good mixture of new school, you know, all action tag team wrestling, and old school, you know, the heels wearing the baby faces down, then the baby faces getting the hot tag, the classic structure. They managed to meld those two things really well. The turning point looked as though it was going to come when Pentagon put Kazarian through the timekeeper's table on the outside with a lovely powerbomb, really brutal stuff, and that left Scorpio Sky facing a 2-on-1 beatdown in the ring, but he really fought back bravely. The Lucha Brothers hit him with a double team move, he bravely got the shoulder up, he was so brave, I've mentioned that already. Then they went for their finisher, the old package pile driver, and double foot stomp combination move, but instead he rolled up Pentagon before the move could be hit, and then Kazarian recovered and charged Phoenix and kind of held him in the corner, and Scorpio Sky was able to pick up the pinfall victory, and SCU are the first ever, the inaugural AEW Tag Team Champions. This also gets an A-. It was a good match. I enjoyed it. I thought maybe it felt a little bit abrupt. Not the match length, but the ending. Like, they won and that was it. And then we go off the show. I know that the Rock and Roll Express were meant to present them with the belts and Ricky Morton had been injured. But at the same time, I'd have liked to have seen more of a celebration. Maybe they got the timing slightly wrong. I don't really know. Also, I'm really surprised. I thought the Lucha Brothers were for certain going to be the first ever AEW Tag Team Champions, but I don't necessarily think that it was a bad idea to have SCU win either. I think this was one of those situations where either team would have been worthy inaugural champions. So A- is the grade, good stuff, and it capped off a pretty strong show, but how strong exactly? Let's get to the overall grade. Overall, this show gets an A-. I thought it was a little bit of a step down in intensity from last week, but then last week's was just an excellent show from top to bottom, and it would have been really hard to match. They did a good job this week of almost matching it, and more importantly even than the quality of this show itself, I suppose, in the long run, I'm really, really looking forward now to Full Gear. I think a lot of the matches are shaping up very, very nicely, especially the two big singles matches, Moxley and Omega, and of course the title match between Cody and Jericho. So great stuff, and thanks for watching. Thanks very much for watching, and let us know what you think in the comments section down below. You can follow Cultaholic on Twitter at Cultaholic and on Facebook at facebook.com/Cultaholic. If you enjoy what we do, then please do check out our Patreon, patreon.com/Cultaholic, where you can pledge. And don't forget, of course, most importantly of all, to hit subscribe and to join us.